Меня зовут Евгений Терухов, я являюсь руководителем корпоративного направления. Кто-то меня знает по программам ОБА, знакомые кто-то меня может знать нашим корпоративным программам, кто-то меня не знает, поэтому с ними познакомиться. И рад вас всех видеть, спасибо большое, что вы пришли сегодня вечером на вебинар. Видишь, меня видно? У нас аудитория, часть аудитории здесь очная, и еще есть заочная аудитория, которая к нам присоединилась, и достаточно много. Сегодня у нас вебинар с Александром Остервальдером. Это автор книги «Генератор бизнес-моделей». Возможно, кто-то книгу читал, видел, смотрел. На сегодняшний день это одна из самых популярных книг в области бизнес-литературы, но хотя бы то, что продано 500 тысяч копий, и было уже несколько, how many references business model generator? Close to a million. Уже миллион копий. Я не успеваю за время. И у нас уже в России было 3 переиздания, которая действительно имела грандиозный успех с точки зрения визуализации бизнес-моделей, начиная от коммуникации по команде, как для стартапов, так и для существующих компаний. У нас есть, я попрошу Александра Тильдика выйти, он расскажет о примере в России на достаточно известной нам всем компании «Газпромнефть». «Газпромнефть» региональные продажи, это сеть заправок и оптовые продажи бензина. Как они работали с этими бизнес-моделями, то есть есть живой пример в России, как это работает. Коротко, а потом к Александру Оsterwalder.
Добрый вечер. Буквально 2 слова. Мы, безусловно, использовали модель, которую Александр показал в своей книжке. Было очень интересно. На самом деле есть и плюсы, и минусы. Мы сделали по этой методике. Плюсы какие? Во-первых, это очень интересно, мы с упорядочиваемся стратегии по развитию своих бизнес-моделей. И это позволяет очень здорово делать выводы. А минусы, как и все инструменты, бизнес-модель не дает ответа. Подготавливать решения, но все равно их вам. Поэтому очень сложно сказать, что именно это явилось там, результатов такого решения. Скорее, это инструмент очень хороший инструмент, который нужно всем использовать.
И несколько технических моментов. Те, кто слушают через веб-камеру, да, вебинар, есть сегодня возможность слушать его на английском и на русском. Для этого вам нужно переключаться либо с поля транслейта на поле Александра, либо наоборот, убавляя звук в зависимости от того, на каком вы хотите слушать. Мы написали это в чате в начале, поэтому Григорий Петрович, наш IT-директор, с удовольствием поможет тем, кто не разберется с этим самостоятельно. Я очень рада приветствовать здесь выпускников в таком большом количестве. Это здорово, что вы собрались. И, не занимая больше ваше время, представляю слово Александру. The floor is yours.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm now going to speak Russian, and my Russian is not very good. Beyond нет and da. Can't say very much. And you also notice the Swiss are not very funny, so I'm not going to make a lot of jokes. But what the Swiss like doing, I'm from Switzerland, I like getting others to work. So you're going to listen, I'm going to talk a little bit about business models and innovation, but I'm also going to get you to work, to do things, because I believe in learning by doing. Okay? So you already see the business model canvas on the table, you got sticky notes, so I'm going to get you to do things. Let me just check first. Who of you has ever heard of the business model canvas, this tool that we see in this front? Who's ever heard of that? Okay, so a couple of you. So I'm going to introduce you to that, but I'm going to give you some ideas, some of the things that we learned over the last couple of years, working with great and large companies from all around the world, and working with startups. Actually, really interesting is it applies to both universes. Companies that are starting out, all the way to some of the biggest companies of the world, and today we work with Gazprom. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about innovation beyond Me Too. And what I mean with Me Too is just copying what others do. We don't want to copy what others do. We want to create great business models. So, together with the team, we wrote this book called Business Model Generation, something like close to 1 million copies in 30 languages. But what's more interesting is that people in companies are using these tools and doing business in a different way. So I'm going to, for those of you who is new, I'm going to show you how to use this. I actually speak very little. I don't do a lot of conferences. I don't do consulting because we're building a software company called Strategizer.com. The idea that we have, think of a big idea, think of a crazy idea, is we want to become the SAP of strategy. SAP is a German software company, and they changed the way we do operations, how we run our businesses, accounting, warehousing, services, those kind of things. We believe that the same thing is going to happen to strategy and innovation. We're going to have tools and software to do that, and I'll show you a little bit about how this is starting out, okay? But first, just to get started, I'll be a little bit provocative. I want you to think of a dramatic situation. You have to go through heart surgery. Imagine yourself. You have to go through heart surgery. You're in the operating theater, one of the best hospitals you can imagine. You have to go through heart surgery. Then your surgeon comes in, and he or she only has one tool in her hands, the tool that he or she will use to perform heart surgery on you. And this is what you see. How do you feel? Probably scary, right? Not very good. It's a pretty basic tool to perform heart surgery. Nobody would do that. Why? Because surgeons are trained to use sophisticated tools, not just one, several tools. Okay? Now, the reason I'm showing this is sometimes when it comes to strategy and innovation and creating new businesses, this is how it feels. A difficult task, like creating new business models, better business models, creating a new business, it's not easy. And we're using tools from the past, very simple, like SWOT. Have you heard of SWOT? Pretty basic tool. You can do some things with it, but you can't perform heart surgery. You can't create a business with these kind of basic tools. Second situation I want you to imagine. You're in a meeting, the best people in your organization, and the phone rings. 2014, you're in a meeting, the phone rings, and somebody pulls out in 2014 this phone. This is the first mobile phone. It's a Motorola Dynatac. It was invented in 1985. Nobody would pull out a phone from 1985. But when you're in a business meeting, most people have no hesitation to pull out tools from a different era, from a different world. 1985. Porter's value chain, Porter's five forces. Now, nothing against those tools and nothing against Porter because he created strategy, right? But the world has changed, as we all know, and companies have become different. Business models have become more sophisticated. So what we need is tools for the situation today. And I think what we're trying to do today sometimes is we try to face the problems of today in business, creating new possibilities with the tools from another century. Okay? So I'm going to give you two tools, one actually, and then we're going to look briefly at one other one. But I think we need a series of tools. And this is why I like the idea of surgeons. A surgeon has many tools. They don't expect one tool to do everything. For complex surgery, they have many tools. And here's where it gets interesting. On average, a surgeon is trained for 13 years to use these tools well. Okay? Now, when you're in finance and accounting, you're trained to use tools and you do that well. But when it comes to strategy, innovation, entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, we're very bad at using tools. And this has to change if we want to create great businesses. And it will change, and I'm seeing companies change today. Okay? So we do operations well, we do accounting well, we do finance well. What we don't do well yet, I believe, from what I've seen, is creating new businesses, reinventing our businesses, creating great business models. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. And we're just going to talk about one tool mainly today, but this tool doesn't do everything, so I'm not trying to sell you that. It's the business model canvas. To introduce this tool, I'm going to just show you a short video, an example, and then I'm going to get you to use it, okay? And whenever you have a question related to this tool, just ask me. But video, example, and then you will use it, okay? So what is the business model canvas? Very brief video to get us started. If you want to look at it while we're going through the video, each one of you can take one of these, okay? So there are 9 building blocks to describe business models, okay? It's called the business model canvas. You can get it for free on the internet. So, we're going to look at 3 things this evening. So we've got about 90 minutes together. I'm still here for questions afterwards if you want. First one is, we're going to look at tool usage. We're going to use the canvas. We're going to operate like surgeons. We're going to prototype and we're going to experiment, okay? So tool usage, I like thinking of surgeons because they're good at using tools. But then we're going to do another thing. We're going to work like architects. Some of you might have heard of Frank Gehry. He's an architect. So when we create new business models, we shouldn't just operate like surgeons. We should create like architects. And the third one here is we should experiment like scientists. So basically, if you're creating new businesses, these are the 3 professions you have to know. Why? Because in the future, sorry, cut off on the left, strategists and innovators, people who run businesses, people who create businesses, they're going to operate like surgeons, they're going to prototype businesses like architects, and they're going to experiment like scientists. That's what we're going to go through in 90 minutes. Okay, so very quick. So I'm going to push you a little bit so we can go fast. First one, tools. Business model canvas, let's get started.
An organization's business model can be described with 9 basic building blocks: your customer segments, your value proposition for each segment, the channels to reach customers, customer relationships you establish, the revenue streams you generate, the key resources and key activities you require to create value, the key partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas. This is what we call the business model canvas, the tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. This includes simple users and paying customers. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. Channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. Customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with customers. The revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. Key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. Key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. Then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business model in one image. This works for startup entrepreneurs just as well as for the most senior executives.
Okay, so this is the tool we're going to use this evening. Pretty straightforward. 9 building blocks. With this 9 building blocks, you can describe any business. Doesn't matter if you're a credit card company, if you're an internet company like Facebook, WhatsApp, or whatever, or if you Gazpromnet. Okay? This even applies to governments. Pretty straightforward. Now, we're going to look at an example of an innovative business model, but then you're going to sketch out each other's business models. So you're going to work in groups of 2, and one person is going to sketch out the business model of another person, okay? So, let me show you an example of what I mean with this, because we're going to map out a business model visually. And this is a small thing that's actually very important. By making a business model tangible, what I mean with tangible is putting up sticky notes, you make things clear, you have a better strategic conversation. A lot of people actually fear this, and I'll tell you why. Because you can't hide your incompetence anymore. You can't hide the fact that you don't know how your business works and how you're creating value. This makes things pretty transparent, pretty straightforward. And it allows you, how we're going to use it a little bit later on, to invent new business models. So we're going to look at one that was new at one point. But what's interesting with Nespresso is they changed the business of coffee. Okay? They changed the business of coffee. It's an example I like to use because we can learn a couple of things from this business. Nespresso belongs to Nestle. Nestle is the biggest food company in the world. It happens to be a Swiss company. What they did is they changed the business model of the espresso segment in the coffee business. And they did something pretty interesting. They got the Swiss to change how much they pay for coffee. So the question is, first the Swiss, then the French, the Japanese, and now even the North American. The question is, how much do you think do Swiss households or French households pay less or more for coffee over the last couple of decades? Do they pay 20% less? The commodities business, buying coffee? Do they pay 20% more, 30% more? What would your guess be? 200%, right? Okay. 2,000, okay. The Swiss like spending money, they have money, but they won't pay 2,000% more. But we're not that far away. Okay? Nespresso got the Swiss, the French, the Japanese, the Americans, even the Russians, to pay 600 to 800% more coffee. Think of it. Think of your own business. What if you could get people to pay 6 to 8 times more for your product or for slightly different products? Would you like that? Come on, that would be pretty fun. I would love it. Okay, we're trying to do it every day. We don't get the 600%, but we increase. The reason they could do that was not just George Clooney. Okay, also played an important role, but it was their business model, and the business model is based on a machine and the coffee pods. And in fact, today their business model is under huge pressure because they didn't reinvent themselves. But what's interesting is how they got to these results. So it's still one of the fastest growing businesses inside Nestle. It's about 30% growth rates per annum over the last couple of years, decades. And it's about a $5 billion business for Nestle. But what's most interesting is their operating margins are much higher than any other business that Nestle has. In fact, they're 6 times higher than the average operating margins of all other Nestle businesses. Pretty spectacular. So basically, what I'm saying is this is a profit-spitting machine for Nestle. Problem is, to a certain extent, this business model today is under pressure. So what did they do yesterday? So what they did is, they have this machine, they invented this machine. They said, we're going to sell this Nespresso machine through retail stores, big chains, not their own stores, retail stores, to households. They also do business to business. We're going to focus on households, the most important business. Once they sell a one-time machine sales, but most of that revenue, which is a transactional revenue, you don't buy a machine every year, you buy it every 3 years, every 5 years, most of that money goes to the machine manufacturers, okay? But here's the second part of the business model, is where they did something very, very special. They said, we're going to sell the Nespresso pods directly to our customers. In the beginning, it was mail order and call center. Then the internet became popular, so they sold through the internet. And then they started selling through Nespresso stores. So in the biggest cities of the world, you have Nespresso stores. New York, Paris, Moscow, you probably have one in St. Petersburg. Okay? So 2, that means you're a world-class city when you got 2 Nespresso stores. So they sell through their own channels. Okay? What it also means, and this is where the business model canvas gets interesting, Nestle as a company never ever had their own channels to sell to customers, which means they had to build these channels first. So what you decide over here on the customer side has an implication on this side. See what I mean? They have to build these channels. Question to you is, Why do you think they use different channels for the machines and for the pods? Because you cannot find the pods in retail stores. Why do they sell the machines through retail, big stores, chains, but not the pods? Why do they do that? They have an margin. Okay, because of the margin, they keep it to themselves. So why do they still use the retail chains for the machines? What do you think?
Because the price of fresh machines compared with other company machines.
Okay, could be. There's another reason.
They just don't have a lot of margin.
Okay, they don't care, but why do they sell them to retail? That's right, but there's a specific reason they sell the machines to retail stores.
Because we would like to show that the price of the machine is low, but the price of the details is really high.
Right? What's specific about retail stores?
I think they want to attract more customers for retail.
The reach of retail is very large. Okay? So what they want is they want broad distribution. Retail has the broadest distribution. What they do then is they get the machine into your household. What happens once the machine is in your household? You're trapped, okay? You're screwed. There's only one type of pods you can use, at least until last year, okay? When the patents ran out. So they use broad distribution to get the machines into your household. Once they're in your household, what's going to happen? They protected that with patents until last year. They lost a lot of court orders, actually. Once you're in here, they sell pods to you again and again and again. What happened here is they started producing so-called recurring revenues. Because you are locked in, because they could defend that with patents until last year. So something big happened here, which is Nespresso turned a transactional business, selling coffee in retail chains, into one where the customer's locked in. Before Nespresso, everybody who bought coffee could switch the brand overnight. You could buy this brand one day, you go to retail, you switch, and you buy something else. Once you have the machine in your household, you're not going to switch as easily, which means Nespresso is going to milk you and going to earn from you again and again and again. Okay? That's how the business model works. And then where we get to the margins, because they're selling their pods directly, they don't just ask for more money, they earn more from it because all the margins stay with them because they don't share the margins with retail. Okay? Now, how is this different? For example, we might say, oh, the razor blade model, very similar. Actually, it's not similar at all. It is similar, but it's not the same at all. If you are Gillette, for example, you sell, not directly, you actually sell through retail. So you're locked in to a certain extent, because once you buy, at least to the men, you know this, right? You buy a shaver, you're going to use Gillette all the time. But here, the difference is you're locked in and they earn the higher margins. This is a profit-splitting machine. Okay, so this is the front stage. Now let's look at the back stage. What do they need to be able to do to make this possible? What are the key resources they need to have? What are the key activities they need to perform? And what are the costs here? So, we already have two key resources. They need the channels that go directly to the customer. They need the patents. At least until last year, they could defend their business model, their patents, the product. What else do they need? What are some other things they would need? If you were Nespresso, what kind of key resources, key activities would you need? What would you need? If you know that this is your business, what do you need? Some are very simple. What do you need? What's a number of things? One thing you need. The easiest. Commercial. Okay, you need to do marketing, branding. What's even more basic than that? Coffee, right? You do production also, but you need coffee. Okay? So a couple of things there. Number one, you need to work with coffee growers to get the best coffee because you can't ask for 6 to 8 times more with crappy coffee that you put in your pods. Okay? Now, Nespresso doesn't, not entirely true, they don't focus that much on making machines, but they do focus on producing the pods. So they have 3 production facilities in Switzerland, and they churn out over 5 billion pods, which is the production cost, and they ship them all around the world. So in Russia, the pods you get they're made in Switzerland. In America, the pods you get, they're made in Switzerland. Okay? So that's number one. Then somebody mentioned marketing, which links to brand. George Clooney's not cheap, so huge cost. Okay? And the last one here, this is the first time that Nespresso, as a Nestle-owned company, sold directly to households. What does that mean for their logistics? All of a sudden, they need to have business-to-consumer distribution. Nestle used to send pallets of coffee to retail stores. Now, they're sending small boxes to households. That's a big shift in logistics, okay? So the decisions made over here have an impact over here. Okay, that was one example of how an interesting business model looks like. And what I want you to take away from this example that I showed you is that every building block in that model has a role to play. There's a real story behind this business model. The question you need to ask yourself, what is the real story of value creation of your business model? It might be the same as everybody else. It could be that it's different. Now, we're going to find out, because what you're going to do is you're going to work in groups of two, and split in groups of two, and one person is going to sketch out the other person's business model. So, what's your name? Alex is going to work with Dennis. And Alex is going to be the interviewer. His task is to understand Dennis's business model in 8 minutes. And what Alex is going to do is he's going to use sticky notes to sketch out the business model. So it's going to look like an espresso business model. So you're going to ask, well, what are your customer segments of your company? And you're going to put up sticky notes. Every customer segment, different sticky notes. Then you're going to ask, well, what value proposition do you have for each customer segment? You're going to put up sticky notes. And at the end, you should have something that looks like this. You might have different colors, and so on, okay? Some ground rules for today. Do not write on a canvas. Why? Because I gave you sticky notes. There's a more important reason. When you put individual building blocks as a sticky note, when you reinvent your model, when you think about your model, you can play with it. So you might say, well, this customer segment actually is not very profitable. What if I took it away? What's the impact on the business model? Oh, well, then I don't need this channel, then I don't have these costs, and so on. So every building block is an individual sticky note, which leads me to rule number 2. Don't put bullet points on a sticky note. Bullet points are a crime. Bullet points on a sticky note are an even worse crime, because then you can't play with the business model. Because what I'm going to get you to do afterwards is Dennis is going to have his business model. He's going to present his business model to somebody else, one sticky note at a time, just like in espresso. Okay? So now 8 minutes in groups of 2. In groups of 2, one person sketches out the other person's business model with an interview. Okay? Let's go. You have the canvases, you have sticky notes, 8 minutes. Sure, you manage your time. 8 minutes time.
Я предлагаю две. Да, они любят смотреть через экран. Да, просто здесь мне так сложно.
Not too bad. Not everything yet, but pretty good. Together. Okay. Let's continue together. So, most of you got through the exercise. Now, when you do it like this, you can go pretty quickly in 10 minutes. You can get it sketched out. When you're in a management team, it can take from 1 hour to a full day. Because sometimes it's surprising that you have to get to a consensus what really are the different parts of the business model. Okay? And this is just for the existing one. We're not even talking about inventing new ones. Now, what I want you to do next is, and I'll show you how to do it. Now, the person who got their business model sketched out, so in this case, it was your business model, right? So, he is going to, Dennis, right? Dennis is going to present his business model to somebody else. And the other person needs to be somebody who doesn't have a business model, but the other person needs to have an empty canvas. Because if I just ask Dennis to present his business model to Pavel, here's what he's going to do. He's going to take his canvas and he's going to commit cognitive murder. Because he's going to hold it in front of him and he's going to try to explain. And Pavel's brain will not know if he should look at this or if he should listen to Dennis. And Dennis is doing this for the first time. So the best way to do it, now listen well, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to tell you again, and then you're going to do it, is to take an empty canvas, put it in front of Pavel, and then Dennis is going to explain his business model, like I did with Nespresso, one sticky note at a time. This is the customer segment. This is what I'm offering them in terms of value and so on. Okay, one sticky note at a time. That's what I want you to do afterwards. Now I will show you how I will do it for Google, and then you do it starting with an empty canvas. Okay, everybody got the message? Because I don't want to see anybody committing cognitive murder in this room. No murder when I'm around, okay? So, I'm going to show you, listen, I'm going to walk you through the business model of Google. Who's done a Google search in the last 24 hours? Who's done a Google search in the last 24 hours? Okay, so we all know Google. And you are all customers of Google. So the first customer segment is the user. It's all of us. That's one of the customer segments. Now the question is, what do they offer us in terms of value proposition? Well, they help us find information. Okay? Pretty straightforward. If I would want to explain the value proposition in more detail, I would use another tool called the value proposition canvas. But what I'm interested in is the big picture. So the question is, how is Google getting their value proposition to us? Very simple, very straightforward, through Google.com. What kind of relationship does Google have with us? It's 100% automated with online profiles. This is the value they create for us. Question is, what do they need to have to do this? What do they need to have here in terms of key resources and key activities to provide this value proposition? Number one, they need to have great search algorithms and a great software development team doing great software development. So the patents on their algorithms is what gets them to perform the best searches on the internet. At least for a long time, this was very hard to copy. So patents is a key resource, software development is a key activity. What they do here is offer this service on the internet, which means, lost it here, they need an extremely good, actually the world's best IT infrastructure. Together with Amazon and eBay, they have the world's best web infrastructure, okay? Which means, in terms of activities, they do a lot of the network development. Who are the core partners they work with? So we're just looking at the core business model, not at the details. Their core partners are, if you want, the network providers that provide them with the pipes to the internet. Which leads us, if we know this, to the key costs, which is IT and bandwidth to access the internet. How much money do they earn from this part of the business model? How much did you pay for your last internet search? Nothing, right? So the revenue stream from us is zero. And you need to make this explicit because it was a strategic decision from the start to offer this for free. What seems natural to us actually costs them billions and billions of dollars. This value proposition, based on these key resources and activities, costs them a heck of money. Why can they do that? We know because they have another customer segment, which are the advertisers. What do they offer advertisers? What's the value proposition? They offer them an audience and clicks. An audience that can click, which means that they have another key resource here that they need to have without a lot of traffic on their website. Their business model doesn't work. So traffic is a key resource which they are selling to the advertisers. Why do they have traffic? Because they're offering this for free. Okay? It's pretty straightforward. Now, if we end the business model, what are the channels that they need to reach the advertisers? It's also the internet. It's a specific program called Google AdWords. Okay? Google AdWords. What kind of relationship do they have with advertisers? Yes, they have key account managers, but it's mostly self-service. And then we come to the last piece here, how they make money. You might say, yeah, it's obvious, it's advertising. Well, we need to be more precise. What turned Google into a filthy rich company was not just that they sell advertising, it's how they sell advertising. So what do? If they sell the search term Nike to an advertiser, let's say Pavel has the biggest shoe chain in Russia, he wants to buy the search term Nike. What's your name? Katerina has the second business, shoe chain in Russia, she also wants to search term Nike, and you also want to search term Nike. What happens if the three of you want to buy this search term Nike? Google will put you in an automated auction, and the price will go up. Okay? So what made them extremely rich is not just selling advertising, but the pricing mechanism of selling through keyword auctions. Okay? So I just walked you through Google's business model. How? One sticky note at a time. If I had shown everything at a time, I would have committed cognitive murder. By walking you through their story, just like I did through the story of Nespresso, was it easy to follow? Was it easy to follow? It was pretty straightforward. So what you're going to do now is, those of you who have the business model, in 2.5 minutes, you're going to present your business model one sticky note at a time to another person who doesn't have a business model, who has an empty canvas. Got that? Do not, let me repeat it, because everybody first does cognitive murder. No cognitive murder, okay? Present 2.5 minutes, one sticky note at a time. Let's go. Search somebody with a canvas, with an empty canvas, and then present your chat. Okay, let's go. 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes. Okay. Let's continue together. Okay. Let's continue together. So most of you got through the exercise. Most of you got through the exercise. So it's the first time you're doing it. I put you under a lot of time pressure. But here's what happened. Did everybody listen? Let's work together now. So I want you to think back to those moments where with the team or with somebody who you met, you were discussing business models, they were trying to explain their business model to you, or you were listening to somebody else, you had to explain your business model. What usually happens is we don't understand each other very well. When it comes to business model innovation or improving business models, we have a meeting with the smartest people in the room. And we want to talk about business models. And we don't use tools, which make things clearer. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to show you a 15-second video of what happens when you don't use these kind of tools to discuss business models, value propositions, and strategies. This is an advertising video we did for a conference called the Business Design Summit last year. Okay? This is what happens when you don't use these kind of tools. So, has anybody of you ever been in that kind of meeting? Smart people, experienced business people, a lot of talking, very little understanding, very little results. Who's never been in a meeting like that? Who's ever been in a meeting like that? Okay? It happens all the time because the higher you get in the hierarchy of a company, the less we use tools, which is silly because the problems get more complicated. So why don't we use tools? So that's the point here, that we want to get out of this phenomena of blah, blah, blah. This is what we call the land of blah, blah, blah. You get out of this land of blah, blah, blah by using tools like this. This is just one, okay? I'll just show you one because we don't have that much time. A friend of mine wrote a book called Blah, 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 Dan Rome, What to Do When Words Don't Work. We just moved beyond blah, 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 okay? So, let me just finish an espresso and then we're going to go towards business model innovation and architects, okay? What I want you, the reason why I take an espresso, to get back to an espresso example, is because we can learn something from them, which is before their success, they had a business model that didn't work with exactly the same product and the same technology. This is how that business model looked like. They were trying to sell an espresso system in a joint venture with machine manufacturers through the sales force of the machine manufacturers to companies, to offices. Two things didn't work. They were not interested, and the sales force had no incentives to sell these machines. So with the same technology, the same product, they almost went bankrupt. So the lesson I want you to take away here is technology and products is not enough. Most people focus on products and technology, forgetting or just not knowing, being ignorant that you want great products, great technologies embedded in a great business model. In this case, the great technology didn't work in terms of business model. They would have gone bankrupt. Then they created a business model that worked. Now what else? Let's look at Nespresso today. I told you that their patents expired, and to a certain extent you can say their business model expired like a yogurt in the fridge. Because today, there are other brands that can make pods with an espresso system because their business model expired. Their patents, that key resource, expired, okay? But what Nestle did at the corporate level, so for those of you in larger companies, this applies more to medium-sized and larger companies, they created other products with other business models. So they created a product line called Dolce Gusto, which is more focused on cappuccino, and which is sold to the mass market. Cappuccino drinkers and espresso drinkers are a different market segment. For those of you who are in the food business, espresso drinkers are the luxury end, cappuccino drinkers are the mass market, which is different from one country to another, okay? But what's interesting here is the machine looks the same, but the business model is different. They sell the pods here through mass market. Then they created specialty, where they use the same idea of recurring revenues for tea. And then they created, this is my favorite, babiness. You don't have, obviously, espresso in here for babies, but you have baby formula. You put it in the machine, press a button, and 20 seconds later, the bottle is ready. I would have loved that when my kids were a couple of months old. That is a pretty interesting business. What they did in terms of business model is they tried to think about, oh, well, maybe we need to work with pharmacies. Maybe we need to rent out this machine because not everybody wants to have use of this machine every year. Basically means one kid every year, so somebody's nodding over it. So what they did is they created a portfolio of business models. In their business around coffee, but not just coffee, also tea, and then the baby business, okay? So they created a portfolio of business models. So that's pretty interesting. 3 examples of how other companies use the canvas. Toyota Financial Services used it to create new growth engines. Their CEO wanted to create new billion-dollar businesses that actually wanted to create growth, $2 billion. So they used the canvas to create new growth engines. MasterCard is a big user. MasterCard, the credit card company, is a big user of the canvas. What did they do? They said, we want a shared language to move beyond products. So we can think business models, value creation. So they did an online course. Well, we did an online course for them, and they trained until now 500 people in 6 months in the business model canvas. It has become the shared language inside MasterCard, okay? Because they want everybody to be able to speak this language. When they have meetings, they use this language because they want to get out of the land of blah, 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 okay? Last one, SAP, software company, they're doing something interesting. Their sales force is using the business model canvas to do what? To understand their customers. So they're in business to business. So they would go to the customers, and with the customers, they would sketch out, the sales force would sketch out the customer's business model with them in the room. Because if you're in business to business, you're selling to companies. And you can really create value for your customers if you understand the business model. Okay? So that's what they're doing. Okay. Now, get ready for another exercise, a little bit of work. Now you're going to prototype or brainstorm like an architect. This is a guy called Frank Gehry, very famous architect. One of the buildings he made is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Anybody been in the Guggenheim Museum? Amazing place. He pushed the boundaries of architecture. So traditionally we think, oh, great architect, that's a creative genius. Well, anybody who's been through design school or architecture school knows that this is a process. And what they do is they prototype a lot to come up with different possibilities and alternatives to create that kind of building, okay? So they make a lot of sketches, a lot of prototypes before they get to something like this. That way of working is what you need to apply in business if you want to create interesting new business models, okay? What does that have to do with us? Prototyping, we're going to do this right now. I'm going to give you an example, and we're going to show you how it doesn't work, and you're going to have to brainstorm and think of different alternatives. So we're going to look at a business. We're going to look at one business model. Your task will be not to stop there, but to imagine what else could this startup do? What other business models could they imagine? Because the biggest problem today, all the people I've worked with until now, is they fall in love with their first idea, they might write a business plan, and then they fail. You want to explore different business models, different possibilities, before you build a business model, okay? That's how you get to the best business models. So what's the example? What's the exercise? We're going to use computer-aided design, so I'm going to show you Strategizer. We're going to take this case study of a startup. They're in the field of medical devices, It was a startup team at the University of Arizona. They had an interesting and cheap technology to do DNA testing. So cheap that doctors could use it in their practice, so they wouldn't have to work with laboratories, okay? This is how the basic business model looks like. They have intellectual property on that DNA testing, okay? They're gonna use this intellectual property to make DNA tests in a medical device, medical diagnostic device, and they're gonna sell this diagnostic device through a third-party sales force to primary care doctors in America. So they can buy this device and do DNA tests directly in their practice very quickly. So the people who come to their practice don't have to wait for the laboratory test. Okay, that's what they're doing. Then they sell this actual device to the doctors in a one-time transactional fee. And in terms of costs, what they have over here, R&D costs, manufacturing, they work with the original equipment manufacturers. They don't manufacture themselves. They do this in China, which would be their main cost structure. So what we did here is just look at the business model. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can prototype this with the numbers. So I put the same business model into Strategizer to show you how you can think computer-aided design like an architect would. What was missing so far in the business models we looked at were the numbers. So I'm going to punch in some numbers for this business model, very rough numbers. So let's say you're this startup, you're prototyping this business, you're asking yourself, how many primary care doctors are there that you could sell to? You do some market research and you learn there are 110,000, okay? Fine, we got that. So we designed the market size. Now we're going to say, well, we're going to sell this device. So we're going to sell, but we're selling through a third-party sales force, a professional sales force. So we have to give them a commission. So basically, it's a sales minus a transaction cut from selling this diagnostic device to primary care doctors. We estimate, let's say we're going to make 5% market share. Doctors buy a device once. The average price is going to be $1,000. The sales commission to this professional medical device sales force is 50% because they're in such powerful situation. So we now know, just by prototyping this, we're earning $5.5 million and we're paying $2.8 million to the sales force. What's still missing is the production cost of the device. So let's punch that in. That's a variable cost of $225 per device. We said 5% market share, one device sold to each doctor per year, gives us a cost of $1.2 million. Let's assume we have sales and marketing costs, fixed costs of $1 million. Okay? Is that enough zeros? Do one more? That's too much. Okay? Take one away. Good. Okay, now if we look at this business model, we don't know if this is going to work, but what happened here is, let's look at how much profit this business model makes. It doesn't make a lot of profit, it makes $500,000 in profit. So this team was actually presenting this business model to a jury of experienced entrepreneurs in medical devices, venture capitalists, and professors. And they all said, you're wasting your time, don't do it. Or come back with a better business model. Because this is the process of prototyping, throwing away your prototype, coming up with a better business model. So I just gave you the business model that doesn't work, okay? So the business model that doesn't work is selling this medical diagnostic device through a third-party sales force to primary care doctors with a transactional fee. Okay? This doesn't work. As a table now, I want you to brainstorm for 2 minutes. As a table, brainstorm for 2 minutes. What alternatives can you imagine? What alternative business models can you imagine? And I'll put the bar high. Come up with a business model that earns 20 times more revenues than this one. Okay? Brainstorm, let's see how good you are. Let's go. Your task. How are you going to increase the revenues 20 times? You're making a medical diagnostic device that does cheap DNA testing. Currently, you're selling to primary care doctors. Okay? Brainstorm, what are you going to do? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You don't need to use the canvas. Let's come up with ideas. Okay, let's do this together. This was just a brainstorming. You don't need to come up with the whole canvas, not even in 2 minutes. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated. But I just wanted you to think of different possibilities for the same starting point, because the whole art of coming up with great business models is saying, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did this? And I'm going to show you a business model that makes 20 times more revenue. What are the things you came up with? Any ideas? Just possibilities. You don't need to explain the business model canvas. Any ideas? What came up?
Our idea is to sell not the devices, but the service to the final customer who are not doctors, who are patients.
Right? So you can sell to patients, and basically there are a couple of services like that. Like you might have heard of 21andMe, something like that. 21andMe, where you can get DNA sequencing as a private customer by selling a little bit of your spit and sending it to them. Okay, that would be one possibility. What else could you do?
We suggest to sell royalty.
Sell?
Royalty to the intellectual
To sell IP.
To sell the intellectual property, right? That would be a very scalable business model saying, we're not going to do it, but our intellectual property is interesting enough to license it to others, okay? That's a second possibility. What else could you do? Any other ideas?
In our consulting services, we can put advertisements on some medical.
Right? So you could become a platform selling other services.
Some recommendations, yes, food.
Okay, could be. You have this genetic disease. This is the kind of food you need to eat. It could be. Okay, that was not very funny, but does it still have the Swiss arm? Yeah.
We talk about customer segments like police and
Okay, so you can think of different customer segments. Okay. You could do franchising, could be.
Unfortunately, we don't have any information about the cost structure of the devices, and the pretty expensive sales, they have to be removed somehow.
Right, so you could work on the costs.
And the pharmaceutical companies were more than friendly with personalized medicine. When you specify target and the main consumer of it is just drug companies,
Right.
Just treating these
Right, so you could do something with the intellectual property and pharmaceutical companies rather than doing yourself. Okay, here's what this team came up with. They said, what if we applied the Nespresso business model to this device? What if we said, well, this is the coffee machine, and we need to create a consumable. Okay? Could be. Now let me show you how that could look like by going here into the software and saying, okay, well, what if to make a test, every doctor would have to use, for every single test they do, they would need to have a testing strip, which they have to then throw away. The testing strip can be ordered through the web, so you don't have to pay a commission anymore, which means now you're selling testing strips to your doctors. Let's punch in some numbers there. What if every doctor bought testing strips every month? That's the same market share because we got 5% of devices in the market. What if every doctor did 5 tests per month? It means they would have to buy 5 strips at an average price of $75. They buy this every month. Oh, that starts to look interesting. So now we have revenue streams of 24 million as a consumable. What's missing now, of course, is we need the production costs of the strips. So production of the strips. Now, what's interesting here is a variable cost. These things cost $2 to make. So market share is still 5%. We said we're selling 5 per month to every doctor. Not that expensive. So what happens to the profitability of our business model? It becomes pretty profitable even at the beginning of their estimated growth. So what I want you to take away here is the same starting point with the right business model can make a huge difference. Okay? So thinking of a better business model can lead you to a much more profitable business model, potentially. Now what's missing here is one thing. All the things we're doing here are assumptions. This is what we believe what could work. So the last piece of our little time together is, okay, we fixed the business model, but it still is just our fantasy that we're going to make 24 million in profits. Now we need to apply what we know from the last profession, from scientists. We need to test our business model before we build it, before we write a business plan. Could it work? Why do we need to do that? Why do we need to test our assumptions? Because we want to minimize failure. I'll show you 2 companies that maximized failure. Why? Because they wrote a business plan. Here's one called Better Place. Who of you heard of Better Place? Better Place was a startup, but a pretty big one. They wanted to make electric vehicles the most normal thing in the world. Their assumption was the independence of an electric vehicle is not big enough. So you have to drive and then you have to fill it up again, so you have to tank, right? So they said, well, what if we had a network of battery swapping stations where you drive in, and rather than plugging in, you drive in, your battery is changed, you drive out. That'd be pretty cool, right? You create, the independence of your car becomes much bigger because now it's like tanking your car. So they created this in 2 countries, Israel and Denmark, and it didn't work because their business plan looked great, the Excel spreadsheet looked great, but customers didn't care. Do you know how much money this startup lost? This company lost $850 million. $850 million. Why? Because their business model, their business plan, the business model they put in the business plan looked great. Investors bought it. What they did wrong is they did not test their assumptions before building it. Okay? Second example is Flow TV. This is an established company. They created a device where you could watch TV throughout the United States in a mobile format. You can make a call, you can watch TV. They lost $800 million. And then I presented this at the Intel Leadership Summit. Somebody came up and said, Alex, that's the official number. The real number is 1.6 billion. Why is it that these things happen? Is it because the guys behind this were stupid? Absolutely not. But they used the wrong process. And the process they used was writing a business plan with numbers that looked great, that they made up, and that they didn't test. So what I want you to keep in mind is writing a business plan, number one, is an intellectual fantasy, also called intellectual masturbation. Number two, is never going to turn out the way you made it. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to burn this business plan, symbolically, and we're going to replace it with something else. Why? Because business plans don't work. Why? So here I'm going to quote a friend of mine who invented the process of testing business models, Steve Blank, Silicon Valley entrepreneur who built 8 companies. I was just teaching this stuff. He likes to say, no business plan survives the first contact with customers. So instead of writing a business plan, we need to replace it with something he calls the search for business models. He calls this customer development, which means we need to design business models. So we prototyped one before, but we shouldn't stop there. We should now test our business models. And then we can write a business plan because we found proof. Now, I'm going to get you to do a last exercise. Then we're going to wrap up the day. And that exercise is about testing a very simple business model. It was actually our first piece we built as a software company. So before building an enterprise software, which actually we're in the process of making it enterprise ready, we said we're going to test it with an iPad app, but even before spending $300,000 on an iPad app, we're going to test the assumptions behind this software. Here are the 2 assumptions that we needed to test, and I want you to brainstorm how you would test it if you had been us then. So, there are 2 assumptions we had, and this was when the iPad was launched. We said people are interested in using an iPad to sketch out business models. So they're interested not just using paper and Post-it notes, but they would use an iPad. That was our first assumption, hypothesis 1. Hypothesis 2 was, we believed that people would pay us $29 for this software at a time when most people were paying $0 or 99 cents for applications because the iPad just came out and most people were just buying iPhone apps, right? For $1 or for nothing. Question to you is, last little brainstorm in your table group. I promised you have to work, so now you have to deserve the questions at the end. Last little exercise. How would you test these 2 assumptions before spending money on developing the app? An app like this costs about $300,000 to make, at least at the time. We didn't want to spend any money before proving this either right or wrong. How would you test these 2 assumptions? 2-minute brainstorming, very last exercise of the day, and then we'll wrap up and I'll tell you how we tested this and why this is important, okay? Let's go, last exercise, 2 minutes. How would you test these 2 assumptions? How would you test them?
Надо посмотреть, как это сегодня в других
Все равно, если людям понравилось, давайте значит, и красиво.
Okay, let's wrap up today. I want to hear from you some ideas. How could you test these two assumptions? How could you test these two assumptions? Just very quickly. What ideas came up? How could you prove that this is right or wrong? What would you do? Yes.
We get established first. We need to measure the market size. I mean,
Okay.
we need
Need to know how big the size is. Yeah. That's an assumption. How would you test to prove how big the market is?
We can ask.
statistical on this store.
Okay.
Two ways.
One way to do so you can do some market research. I'm looking for proof.
If you have current customers, you can ask them about, would you like to have such possibility?
So I have people here in the room. I could have asked you then, do you like this iPad after you want it, right? So if I would ask you, you will tell me, yeah, this looks great. Could be a good start. But maybe when I leave the room, she's going to say, that sucks. Okay? So talking is a good start, but talking is not yet proof. So the first thing you can do is talk to customers. But you still need to get a little bit more proof. What other ideas did you come up with? What else could you do? One proof is the money. So what could you do? You could do prepayment, right? You could get people to pay before the app exists. Why not, right? Today, everybody does that on Kickstarter. When we did it, it didn't exist. We actually did that with the book. You could do that. What else could you do?
This partially what we suggested, which is to create a special website and understand whether or not we do have this demand at all, and whether people will be interested in this product. So we suggest to provide say marketing actions saying like first 100 or first 1,000 customers will be granted discount 50% or something like that. And we'll see whether or not people will be coming to this website and order the product.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Yeah.
The extended of the same proposal, but on your website, when you present your book and the model, just download, you make the button download iPad application. That's
Right.
it.
There you go. So you
And
can
then you
get
count the clicks.
you can get people to do something. So in general, the general rule is when you start with a new idea, okay, when you have a new idea, you have no clue if it's going to work. So uncertainty is at its maximum, right? You're somewhere up here in terms of uncertainty. So when you start and you are maximum uncertain, you're going to try to spend as little money as possible, small budget. When you test things, what we're just doing here with some ideas, when I talk to people, I will learn something, then I can spend a little bit more. Okay, I could do this landing page. I can do pre-purchasing. The more you learn, the more you can spend on testing. So I could make maybe a small version of the application, which only costs $80,000. I could spend more. So you want to reduce the uncertainty by increasing the amount of money you spend on tests. Here's what we did. Very simple to test these two things. None of you talked about this too much, that pre-sales could go in that direction. We put up a landing page, simple website, took us an hour. We said our application does 1, 2, 3. Sketch out your business model, add numbers, test your profitability. Are you interested? Sign up. If you get 10,000 people to come to your website, which is easy to do, but only 80 sign up, you have a problem, right? That's even before pre-purchasing, you can just learn from that. Now, if you have 5,000 signing up, pretty good. What we did then is, we had people signing up with their email, then we would ask them, would you pay $100 for this application? Why do you think we asked for $100 when we wanted to know if they would pay $29? So if you ask for 100, people are going to say, oh, I'd never pay 100, but they will give you their highest price. I'll pay 10, I'll pay 20, I'll pay 40, I'll pay 60. In our case, 50% of people answered, you're criminals. Okay, they wouldn't buy the app. 30% said, you're crazy, but I would pay 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, right? They would give their highest price. 20% said, $100? Of course I'd pay you that. Where can I send you the money? Okay, so they were interested. Now I was proud, and I showed this to a friend who does this professionally. He said, yeah, you got some data, but you want proof. You want a pre-sales to have real hard facts. I said, well, yeah, I can't pre-sell something that doesn't exist. He said, yes, you can. So when we launched the online course, so we have an online course on the internet, we pre-sold without telling people that the thing didn't exist. We pre-sold at 3 different prices, $299, $499, and $699. And people paid a different price. And for those who paid too much, because at the end we charged $499 after a testing period, we gave them the money back. Because we said, hey, you were participating in a test, and we gave them the money back. Those who paid too little, they were lucky. There is today, even in large companies, less and less excuses for doing tests. You can't do everything because the legal department is going to knock on your doors and they say, you can't do that. If you're a pharmaceutical company, the legal department is going to knock on your door all the time. But the problem is, you don't perform these kind of tests, you are maximizing your risk. If you write business plans, you are wasting your time and you're maximizing your risk. That's why we need to do these kind of things, and that's why the best companies of the world are starting to experiment and test before they do things, okay? So, finishing with this, if we want to succeed, we actually need to fail all the time. And what I mean with that is not like the big failures we've seen, it's small and cheap failures in these kind of tests to learn what works and what doesn't. And that's the way how we can create revolutionary new business models without actually taking on too much risk. Great ideas don't mean a lot of risk if you follow this kind of process, okay? So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks. If there are any questions, I will be here because I think everybody is tired. I got you to work for a long time. Maybe 1 or 2 questions now.
I have 1 or 2 questions from the audience and then 1 from the webinar. Yes. Okay. The audience, please.
Any questions?
1 or 2 questions? No?
Everybody's exhausted. I killed you. I killed your energy. Great. Okay.
The webinar question was basically the 2 questions. One is where can you find the models? Because we haven't presented the book.
Yes.
It's on your site.
Okay. First question, where can I find the business model canvas? It's free. Anybody can use it. Every company, actually almost all big companies are using it in one way or another. Most startups are using it. You Google business model canvas, you can get a free download. You can Google our newest tool called the value proposition canvas. You can download it. We're writing a new book around the value proposition canvas, which will be very interesting because it's going to be a book and a software at the same time. It's all for free, not the book, but the tools you can get for free. Just Google it. Value proposition canvas business model.
And second question from the webinar view was with what companies supply
This kind of model?
What type of products?
Find me one that doesn't. In one way or another, a lot of companies do. The ones I've seen from the inside is companies like GE, Procter & Gamble. I work with MasterCard. Lego uses it. What is also interesting, a lot of startups use it. So very unusual mix. Last year was actually the first year when the big companies started to scale up usage. A lot of small teams inside large companies use it. Actually, a lot of Russian companies use it as well. But the big scale usage, where they get hundreds of people to start using it, only started last year. What I was involved in was MasterCard, 3M is starting to use it, but basically any type of business, even governments, Canadian government use this, because even governments should have more money coming in than going out. And not all governments get that. A lot of governments, they spend more money than they actually earn. Great. Yep. Last one.
When you talk about the Nespresso model, you said that they made it different when they created the cappuccino caps and tea caps and the baby, yes?
Yes.
And would they change the model for patents? Because the story told that they can file bankruptcy because other
Can copy the business model, yeah.
And
There's different types of patents, yes.
yes. So
There's different patents for different segments. So in the new
they
model,
won't expire in 2 or 3 years.
they won't expire immediately. It's a longer period. So that, when you build a new business in a new area, that's actually a very good point. It does, in the baby nest sector, they have new patents. Right? That's correct.
And actually, I think on the last week I can go and I was in the retail store and I saw the capsules there.
Yeah.
Where the machines, I mean, in the same place.
Where?
Where you go the retailers for the machines and
Yes.
the specific shop for
Yes.
the parts. But
Yes.
in St. Petersburg, I see some shops where machines
And they sell the pods as well? Well, that's probably either they changed the business model for Russia, which I doubt, or there's some very good entrepreneurs who are innovative and they just buy and then they resell at a higher price. That's entrepreneurship. But it's an interesting question. The larger question here is, when do you stick to a business model that you will apply in your company around the world, in different cities, in different regions, the same business model, and when do you adapt it? Okay? So if you're Nestle or Procter & Gamble, you might have one business model in one segment, but when you go to a different country, because the environment is different, the context is different, you might adapt your business model. Okay? So, but it's a difficult question because sometimes when you adapt your business model, you undermine the story. And when you undermine the story, the power of the business model loses its attraction, right? As soon as you sell to retail, you're killing the margins that you have, right? So it's always a kind of a question, do you want to adapt or not? Great. We're all ready for drinks now, right? Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope you got something out of these.
Коллеги, спасибо большое тем, кто пришел. На этом наше мероприятие сегодняшнее закончилось. Ваши уже индивидуальные, выпускников будут продолжаться. Днем выпускников вы говорите, что у вас есть чем заняться. Спасибо большое. Надеюсь, что было полезное мероприятие. Вы узнали что-то интересное для себя. Может быть, еще будем рады вас видеть снова. Те, кто пришел на инфосессию,